Hi everyone, I'm Leandra Franich from PaperArtsy, and today we're starting a new topic on the PaperArtsy blog, and it's called Triptychs. Now triptychs are usually 3 panels that are somehow hinged together, or it can be 3 completely separate pieces of art presented as sort of linked together somehow as a triptych. And they're a lot of fun to do. You can do really simple things or you can do really complicated things. If you want to get inspired, go and look at the blog, because there's heaps of different ideas that I've posted on there with lots of pictures for you to take a look at, and perhaps it'll spark some ideas within you and what you might like to do. So here's a couple of things. This is something that Alison Bomber did for us with Limperella's stamp release, this is plate 34, and there are 3 little faces that are a bit like stained glass, and they're presented together, but they can be used as 3 separate stamps. She's used a gloss glaze on them to make them really shiny, so that's quite simple the way she's layered it up onto altered book pages. Here's another idea. We're using actual frames, so you could make 3 of this kind of thing. And this is using Alan Vargo stamps, just in a really striking colour palette of blue and orange, layering them up, and a little bit of torn paper and some quotes, and it's just inside a niche frame with a white border. So again, very simple but very striking. 3 of those on the wall together would look fabulous. In a similar vein, here's 2 more using Claire Lloyd's stamps. This is one of the earlier stamp sets that she did. And these are quite a cool, again, blue and orange kind of colour combination there, and the little flowers are quite layered up in the frames just to give a bit more dimension. So really simple, the sort of thing that you would do on a card, and this can be presented again in a niche frame. So what I'm going to show you today is something a little bit different to all of those ideas, and I'm kind of basing it on this tag that I made when I was demonstrating at a show recently using Sarah Newman's newest stamps. So she's done a couple of stamps for us which are kind of Christmassy, but they don't have to be. So you've got this cool bird on there, there's a bit of music. This one in particular doesn't have to be quite so Christmassy. This one's got a few more Christmas type words on it. But I'm going to use these elements and perhaps some stencils and some archival inks, coloured inks, and build up something onto a triptych. Now, a really simple triptych that I've designed is using 3 bits of chipboard. And the chipboard comes in a pack like this, so we sell them with 4 in a pack, and all I've done is taken 1 sheet and then cut it in half to make the 2 sides, and then I just gave it a bit of a shape at the top to make it a little bit more interesting. So 2 sheets like this, and you can make that kind of formation without a lot of wastage. Now, I'm not quite sure how this is going to go down, because I am intending to work directly onto the grey board. So our grey board is grey on one side, and then it's got a white paper coating. It's a really cheap paper, so it's not a great paper to work on, but I'm going to try it anyway. If I put a layer of paint on there first, it should be okay. And I'm just going to work directly onto it, because by taping them together, then when I pull them apart, they might get layered up onto a larger canvas, or they could just be hinged, and then it could be a thing that stands up on its own. But as a backup plan, I've also got a sheet of paper, so I've traced the same shape onto a sheet of our heavyweight smoothie paper. And of course this is high quality and super smooth, so this is really nice to work on. So if it all sort of turns to custard on the grey board, then I've always got the option of doing something similar again directly onto paper. Then I just need to cut down my guidelines there and stick that onto the grey board. Okay, so let's get started. So we're just going to start by putting a base layer of paint down on here, and I may have to grab a brush as well, but I'll start with some light colours and we'll see how we go. So that's Haystack, which is quite a nice base yellow because it happens to be opaque, and I always like to build up with opaque paints because you just get a nice base, and I don't bother with gesso. Chalk paint is inherently very got a lot of tooth in it, and it's quite gritty, so that makes it really ideal for just working directly onto any surface. And of course these chalk paints do work quite happily onto all kinds of surfaces, so there's absolutely no need to use a gesso. This kind of saves you a whole step, which is handy. So this colour is called chalk, and I'm really trying to sort of rub it in as I work, because by rubbing it in it just ensures that the grey board has got sort of quite good coverage. And you can see it's just nice even to blend the haystack underneath. By adding chalk on top of haystack, you've got that warmth underneath, but it just blends it through a little bit. So let's add a bit more of this haystack again. Now I kind of got in my mind that I want to sort of have a thing happening through here with a bird there. So I'm kind of thinking this is going to be the focal area, this area here. So I'm thinking I'm going to build up with some stencils and other layers on this background. So this area is going to end up pretty blank, and probably down this area as well. So I'm just going to come back again with more chalk and soften that back. So cool doing a braid background because they're really quick, really easy, and even just with two colours you get quite a nice effect. We probably won't stop at 2 because it's fun to add more. Right, let's see what happens. I'm just going to build it up slowly. So now I want to move on to something a little bit warmer and a little bit deeper in tone. So I think I'm going to go to Autumn Fire. Autumn Fire is, as you can see, a bit more translucent. You can see those chevrons coming through on the label, whereas with the haystack it's much more opaque. And Autumn Fire is quite a nice rusty sort of a orangey colour. And we don't really want loads. Now I'm sort of thinking, because I've got this line in my mind that I want to have, I might actually try and make a deliberate line. So let's just come along here and create that line. It's kind of like going to be a bit of a grounding. It's quite good. And you see, by only inking up half the brayer with the paint, if you just apply paint to a small part of it, then you get that nice soft edge where it washes out into the centre. I'm just making it bolder at the top and keep still it staying nice and soft down the bottom. Now if we want to blend that out a bit, go back to your chalk and let's pick up a bit of that. And how about we try pulling the chalk this way and just see. It softens it through a little bit, but not too much. Cool, okay. Well, we might do that again with a couple of other colours. So let's go to blood orange, I think we'll try. Now, just got to make sure, because I'm getting, oops, that needs a decent shake. Hang on a minute, I haven't used that one for a while. That's what happens when you leave your paints sitting. Every now and then I turn them upside down in the box, in the storage box, so that they just get a nice rotation. So this is darker. And again, see, I've just got the tiniest bit of paint around the very edge of the brayer there. So I might just put a little bit here. That's all right. And I think we'll bring a few greens and things into it as well. So I'm going to, again, play it safe, and I'm going to go to a opaque. This is Tinned Peas. So I'm kind of thinking autumnal colours because I've got a bird, and the bird is going to go in the trees. So that's kind of what I'm trying to replicate. So this one here, I've got the paint all over the brayer, and I'm just going to apply a really little sort of, not a lot of pressure, just a little bit of pressure, and start to build that up. So if you just are really gentle in the way you apply the paint, then you're not going to get massive big lines. I mean, obviously here I deliberately wanted a line, but if you don't deliberately want any strong lines, then just apply it gently kind of flick it a little bit. So this is going to create sort of like foliage, I guess. And that paint is really running out. So now I'm just going to, I've got a little bit of white left here, so I'm just going to soften through again. Okay, pumpkin soup. Pumpkin soup's always a good one. So it's very much in between the colours that I've been using, but this one's a translucent and it's really warm. So it's just a warmer yellow than the haystack, so it's going to give that lovely richness. So let's bring that over the top here. See that? How it's just got that really nice warmth to it. It also works fantastically with the green. And it's because it's a translucent, you kind of build up your layers really nicely and really happily, because it sits on top and it allows everything underneath to show through. You see, it's really easy to build that on top of the haystack. Okay. Do I want one more? Well, seeing as we've done the warm yellow with the pumpkin soup, I'm a little bit tempted to try a bit of the limelight. But before I do that, I always like to put my limelight on top of another green. So we've got in our new limited edition set Granny Smith. We've also got in the new limited edition set Teresa Green. And guacamole is kind of like in between those two as far as colours go. So if you had those two from the limited edition set, you could kind of mix them together. But if you sit limelight on top of particularly these lighter greens, it's really going to give it a nice base. So let's go for Teresa Green first, and if it's not bright enough or dark enough, then we might go to the Granny Smith or the guacamole option, I think. So you see it's an opaque, so it's kind of blocking out a little bit. I don't want to have too much of the blocking out going on. And let's just notch it up to a bit of Granny Smith, I think. Great names. People are calling it our Cluedo set. There's, in the set there's Teresa Green, Granny Smith, Captain Peacock and Professor Plum. So they're really nice colours and a lot of fun to work with. That's nice. Just a little bit brighter. It's great how with the brayer you can be quite topical about where you put your paint, so you don't have to get too carried away. And it is just, I love this putting it on and knocking it back, so I'm just going to put a little bit of the lighter one on top of the Granny Smith. You're just always sort of juggling it back and forth. Cool. All good. Right, so now let's go for the whammy, limelight. If you use it on its own, it tends to look quite neon. So like I say, if you put it on top of this green base, you'll get a much warmer, richer, brighter green going on. Well, hey, look at that. It just lights up, just like the pumpkin soup did. Just gives it that nice warmth. And when it runs out on my brayer, I just get a bit more ruthless in pulling it in across other places. Oopsie. Okay, so I think that's good enough for the brayering background. There's plenty of information going on there. So now what I'm going to do is bring in some stenciling and some stenciled layers. We've got some quite cool new Crafters Workshop ones that have come in. So I'm thinking that these could look really good just to add more detail into what's going on here. So I'm going to start with that because I think that this little line with the circles on it, loving that. So using some cut and dry foam here, and I kind of want to get this line across the top and circles. Quite like those circles. Okay, and I think what I'll do is I'll repeat the circles underneath, and I might blend that into Autumn Fire. So it's just taking the two colours. Maybe I'll just pick up the Autumn Fire. If you have on your piece of foam, you're one colour on one side of the foam and one on the other. Just make sure when you're stenciling you always massage the paint into the foam. I'm doing a bit of it. I feel a bit cockamamie. My hands all going in the wrong direction. Actually, I probably should have used a brush. That would have made more sense, because it's quite fine detail in the stencil, and with a brush you get more topical application, so if I'd thought it through. But anyway, I've got my little circles going on there, so that's fine. That just adds that little bit more detail. That stencil is Crafters Workshop 584, stencil number 584. So let's bring some other patterns using the paints and what have you into other aspects of this design. Now I was quite liking this one. This is 586, and quite like this pattern here. So different piece of foam. I've got some green paint left on my sheet. I think it might be Granny Smith. Actually, I'll just move it up so I don't obliterate that line. So don't have to use the whole pattern. See, it just gives a bit of texture there. So I'm going to pull it through down here, and I need a bit more of that paint. Cut and dry foam always sucks up the paint more than you expect it to, doesn't it? So start at the bottom and then pull it up. Okay, might just do a little bit over in the centre. Just to carry that pattern through there. I like that one. And seeing I've got a green bit here, I could probably get away with like a sort of semicircle of that going on there as well. If you smooch it like this, where you do this scrubby thing, you don't get, sometimes you get a softer application of paint. If you do the hammering it thing, you get a heavier application of paint like I have down there. So you can control how much detail you get in your stencil by how you apply the paint through your cut and dry foam. Right, like this little bird, so he's going to go somewhere. And I'm also, there was another pattern that I really liked. Here we go, this one. So what's this one? This is 554, this particular stencil. That's gorgeous. And so I'm thinking that up here I'm going to bring some of that, because we've got that line of Autumn Fire, so I need to pull that out there through that chicken wiry thing, or through this sort of herringbone type pattern. Decisions, decisions. Let's try the herringbone. I suppose I could do one above and a different one. Actually, I quite like that one. It's quite cool, these stencils, where they've got a few different things going on. And I'm going to do the smoochy thing. Take it right to the edge. And then try and bring it down. Gosh, the pattern goes right up to the edge of the stencil, so I've got to be a little bit careful I don't go off the edge. See? Now if I want to make that darker, I could just add a little bit of the claret. No, it wasn't claret, was it? It was blood orange. So if I go over the top here, perhaps just the lower edge with the blood orange just to darken that cornery bit. And when you use sort of two colours like that, it just gives it a little bit more depth. So you've got the orange at the top and then the sort of more red at the bottom. Cool. Okay, so down here, very tempted to do a little bit down there as well. Not too much though, so I think I might just, let's see, yeah, just a touch, that's enough. So you could even do the haystack, that could be quite cool too, shall we? Or pumpkin soup. Pumpkin soup. Let's do the pumpkin soup. So you can see just using these stencils to build up interest in the background is such a quick and easy way to do it before I tackle stamping. Oh, I like that. Okay, gonna have to have that somewhere else. Okay, do you reckon that's enough? See, when it's a lighter colour, you can go a bit more crazy, but with the darker colours, you just have to be a bit more careful. Because the lighter colours... Oh, we got a little bit. Okay, good. No, one more. Gosh, don't know when to stop. Okay, so now I'm going to start thinking about adding some stamping detail onto that. So I think the next step on this is to perhaps bring in some stamping as in addition to the stenciling. So I like to sort of start with just some, perhaps something scripty would go quite well here, and I've got a range of archival inks, and so it's just a matter of sort of choosing colours that work with what you've already got going on in your colour palette. And also I like to sort of sometimes stamp the image once and then apply it to the background, because the second generation is going to be softer and softer as an image, and that way it doesn't sort of dominate too much. So perhaps this area up here I can use the first generation because it's going to come up darker, but then as you work your way down, the second generation will be, and third and fourth, softens out each time you stamp. And rather than using an acrylic block with a stamp like this, if I just sort of pick it up and position it and just use a little bit of the stamp, then it just gives you a sort of a softer impression as well, because you're not using all of it and you don't get that sort of real blocky effect where it's too much of a square. And so even just stamping the same thing in the same area a couple of times softens it through a bit as well. So again, it's just working out from this solid area that I've created there. So that's one scripty stamp from the Sarah Newman. That's Sarah Newman plate 14. And on her newer stamps that I was thinking about using, I might just cut to the chase and go straight onto the branch, because this is really the focal point here, is the branch and the bird. That's really what I want to use. So I'm just going to get the branch, and this time I probably will use an acrylic block, which I seem to have lost. Oh, there it is. They always disappear on you. So let's see. So I'm kind of, if I arrange it perhaps on my block where I've got a vertical stem, this is quite good, this, because you can use it, obviously you can use it horizontally or vertically depending on what you want to achieve. So I'm just going to build up with greens some branches. This one is the Fern Green Archival. And kind of feeling like I need a solid one, and then I'll just bring it down, and I'm just going to repeat it a few times, and I might do it in a lighter ink as well. Actually, I could do it in tree branch. Quite like the tree branch ink. And just sort of layer it up a bit. Now, you see, so it's just starting to build up the twig effect. And I might do another one. And then I think I'm going to just do a really bold one in the potting soil. Like that. Right. Okay, I'm going to stamp the bird in black, this one. So that's ESN 18. I'll turn it around again because I kind of need to see what I'm doing. And I'm sort of thinking that I'm going to get this to sit on the red line there. So when you make your backgrounds like this, stamping in black always sort of lets the focal image pop. So that's the plan. Now, do I want it there? Originally I kind of thought I wanted it back a bit, but I think I'm going to come about here. Yep. Okay, so you get that. Now I could potentially do another one, but I don't think, no, I don't think I will. What I was thinking was using the bird that was on that stencil, this one. I might have one of those down here just to balance it out a little bit. I don't want the whole thing to get too busy or complicated, so I thought I could have a little one down here. And I'll just use, I think I might use some ink for this. So if I go back to the orange blossom, and we'll just darken that. Get a bit of shading going along there. See, so it's just a little bit more interesting. And what can I do? Maybe a bit of wordy stuff. Okay. Cool. Good. So the final thing, I mean, I don't want to, like I said, I don't really want to overcomplicate it. It's just a matter of doing something quite simple. And I was thinking that perhaps finishing with something a little bit scripty would be quite fun. And even using something like this in white paint over the top can also be quite a nice effect. So I think I might just do that and get a light coloured paint like the chalk. And in fact, texture would be another really nice thing. So just perhaps adding something in grunge paste, for example, would work really well. But this is nice just to have a lighter shade coming through over the top of some of those layers. So I'm going to use it in this sort of white space bit over to one side, and I'll just put a little bit and do this sort of circular smoochy thing. And take a look at that. Yep, so it's almost a really soft texture going through with this script. And we'll do a bit more. Now that the bird's there, you can kind of see the dark areas, so you kind of want to come up to it, but obviously not. You could go over the top of the bird, couldn't you? But it would be quite striking to do the white on top of the black bird. And then maybe a little bit down here. It's a bit more obvious because that's the darker section. And then a bit up here. Okay. Now if the bird, it's picked up some of the texture from the browering, which is why it hasn't stamped up really black over the whole thing, because this is a little bit textured. If that bugs you, you can just take a paintbrush and dip into your archival ink and really make that whole outline a little bit more solid. But I think I'm just going to leave it like that. And then the last thing I think is, if you want each of the panels to pop when you pull all three apart, then you can take your cut and dry foam and go around the edges of the panels to give them that sort of distressed effect. Or you could do that with paint as well. The ink pads are quite a good way to do it. It just depends how dark you want to go. So if you start with perhaps a light colour, and then each panel will sort of stand out a bit more. And this is nice if you're going to then layer them onto black card, or perhaps another canvas. You might make another canvas background. I could do that and layer it onto there. As you're working on these, if you're going to do this sort of thing where you edge them, just try and do each colour onto each section of the triptych step by step, because it's quite tempting to work with 2 or 3 colours one after the other, and then it's harder to get all 3 looking the same if that's important to you. So even though going around them all a few times can get a bit boring, they will look a bit more balanced at the end. So that's dandelion. Okay, and then you can repeat that perhaps with orange blossom, just to get the depth that you prefer. I try to put the first colour on quite heavily so that it goes a bit further in, and then with the next colours I sort of don't go quite so far. So doing a triptych doesn't have to be complicated. This is pretty easy, just all on one layer stamped. But if you want, you could do the same sort of thing with an abstract style. So using lots of paint, lots of texture, lots of stenciling. You could do a journaling style triptych. You could do something that's a bit more assemblage and collage-y with various collage materials. They're just so versatile, and it's quite nice working on 3 panels. So I do urge you to have a go and see what you can come up with. And the challenge is open from Sunday the 25th of October through to Sunday the 8th of November. So there's 2 weeks if you want to join in and have a go. You've got plenty of time, but perhaps you're watching this video after that challenge has closed. Don't let it stop you. Triptychs are just something that have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, and they really are a nice way to just mix up your art by working on 3 panels instead of 1. And they can be the same size, different sizes, it really doesn't matter. So I'm going to lay that onto black card so that you can sort of see how it pops as soon as you put that onto a background. And that's just on a plain background. You could have a lot of fun putting it onto a much more interesting canvas background that would fit really well onto an A4 canvas, and you could add other embellishments and all sorts of things. So thanks for joining us again, and we hope to see you do something along and join in our challenge on the PaperArtsy blog. I'll put all the links in the description to this video so that you can flick through to there and join us. Oops, just realised after we finished filming that section there was upside down. Schoolgirl error. So there you go, that's it, looking the right way round. And we'll see you next time.